We have started. Meeting has started, sir. I know, I know.
Please.
Annual lecture series. This particular edition is being held virtually, and I can promise you that it will be just as rich and educative. The theme, again, to reiterate, is consolidating human capital development through domestication of skills. And we hope to be able to interrogate this theme through various perspectives from our distinguished and experienced speakers. And hopefully we'll be able to contribute to the literature and policy development on the topic. So without much further ado, I'll hand over back to our moderator, Mrs. Oluchi Okafor, who is the MD of Multimix Academy and a member of the OGTAN National Executive Committee. So Oluchi, back to you.
Thank you, sir, for introducing me better than I did myself. I really appreciate it. So again, welcome everyone. We're going to have what we would call a prayer, seeing as a lot of us are yet to particularly learn the new national anthem. We're going to use the second stanza of the old anthem, which is the national prayer, and we're going to recite that, and we're going to take that as a way of committing this lecture series to God's hands, and also committing our nation into God's hands as well. Secretariat, I don't know if we can have that on the screen. Okay, there it is. So we'll start on the count of 3, 1, 2, go. Oh God of
creation,
direct
our noble cause, guide our leaders right, help our youth the truth to know, in love and honesty to grow, and live in just and true, great lofty heights attain, to build a nation where peace and justice shall reign.
Amen. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much for that enthusiastic reading. Next on the agenda, because this is a virtual program, I'd like to get all the protocol out of the way to start with our speakers. And because we're trying to manage time, because we know this is a work day and a lot of people have things to do. So I would like to acknowledge and welcome the president of OGTAN, Mazi Sam Azoka Onyechi, to give us his own welcome remarks and tell us why we're here, and essentially just, welcome us into the vision of this program. So, Mazi Sam, are you there, sir? Good morning, my president. Secretariat, please confirm if Mazi is here. If he's not, we can
he's not here yet, please.
Okay, that's fine. VP, I'd like to take it back to you. Would you advise that we wait or we commence with other things and then he can give his speech when he gets here? What would you advise?
Yes, so let's go ahead because of I know some of our speakers they have
other time constraints.
Yes, because considering our speakers. So let's go ahead. When the president comes in, we'll just allow him to say his welcome address
awesome.
when time permits. Yeah.
I'm fine with that. Thank you so much, sir. So I have permission to proceed and I will do just that. So once again, my name is Oluchi and I'll be moderating this. I'd like to go over a few house rules, and someone is already currently breaking one of the house rules, which is for everyone to please remain on mute except they want to speak or except they are asked to unmute themselves. This is important in order to put to make sure that we have a good event and that there are no distractions and that everybody is able to deliver what they are here to and also accept or receive what they are here to. If you want to ask any of the speakers any question, you can type the question you can type the question in the chat box. Please utilize that chat box as much as you can. Any questions, if there's anything that is said that particularly, speaks to you or you want to have a conversation about it, by all means, please use the chat box at all times. Questions will be treated at the end of each speaker's presentation. Of course, because of time, we may not get to all the questions. Any questions that are not answered, we will treat and disseminate to everyone via email after the program, because again, we're working with a very, very strict time schedule on this program and would like to keep it that way. So right while we await the president, we will go on and have our very first speaker come on and start the program. And our first speaker is Engineer Osayande Igiehon, who unfortunately is unavailable and has asked for a representative to represent him today in the person of the Vice President of Corporate Resources, Ms. Eluemono Olumagin, as he's unavoidably absent on an impromptu trip out of Lagos. I will, however, still read Mr. Osa's profile because that's what we have. I'd like to confirm if Ms. Eluemono is here.
Yes, I am. Good morning.
Good morning, ma'am. Thank you so much for joining us. I will read a very abridged version of all the speakers' profiles before they speak. Please note that I said this is very abridged because these are very accomplished people with incredibly long profiles. So we're just going to keep it as short and sweet as possible. So Engineer Osa Igiehon is the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of Heirs Energies Limited, the operator of NNPC Heirs Energies OML 17 joint venture. He's an accomplished energy sector executive, technocrat, and thought leader. In the past 15 years, Mr. Osa has either been a chief executive officer with accountability for the enterprise bottom line, or has been in senior management positions with responsibility for value delivery, risk management, and capacity development. As the CEO of Heirs Energy, startup and 2021 entrant into the sector, Mr. Osa has built the company's organization, ethos, and capability from scratch, doubled its oil and gas production, and led the company successfully through a most challenging year in 2022 when the company was hard hit by crude oil theft. With his leadership, Heirs Energies in less than 3 years of existence is now widely rated as one of the country's leading indigenous upstream companies. Before Heirs Energy, Osa had a 27-year career with Shell, rising to a group vice president position in an outstanding career that saw postings in Nigeria, Netherlands, Russia, and Gabon, as well as participating or delivering projects, consultancy, audits, or trainings in all continents except South America. Notably, he was the 2013 SPE Nigeria Council chairman, where he recorded landmark achievements for SPE in Nigeria. He has received several commendations for his service to SPE, culminating in his recognition as a distinguished member of SPE International in 2016. Osa is a 1992 graduate of Electrical and Electronics Engineering from the University of Benin, and he is married with children. The topic that his representative will be dealing with today is the dynamism of the rapidly evolving and complex energy sector in Nigeria, human capital development as a crucial enabler, addressing brain drain. I would like to ask that his representative come up and start with her presentation. I'll say to give her a round of applause, but we can't, so we'll just I will give you the round of applause. At least hopefully that would help
I'll
to
take the
encourage.
virtual one.
So thank you so much, ma'am. Please, the floor is yours. We will be giving each speaker 10 to 15 minutes to speak, and then we'll take another 5 minutes for questions. I hope that's okay.
That's okay.
Thank you so much.
I would like to share my screen when I'm ready.
Yes, I think you can.
Okay.
Secretariat, can she share her screen, please? I think she should be allowed to do that.
While we get
Oh,
that.
I'm so sorry, ma'am. I'm so sorry, ma'am. I have to interrupt. Our president is here, and I have to give him the floor first because he was supposed to speak beforehand. So I really apologize. Mazi Sam, welcome, my president. The floor is yours, sir.
My sincere apologies, madam,
much,
and every of our attendants. Very sorry I had some early morning meetings that I could not get out of. And then after that, I had a very difficult time logging in. I think it was network issues. So very sorry to be doing this and interrupting the flow of the program. But I'll just quickly address the audience and our esteemed speakers, the chairman of board of OGTAN, Dr. Mayowa Afe, the OGTAN Vice President, Mr. Folabi Davidson, MD of Dava Consult Limited, fellows of OGTAN here present, OGTAN Executive Council members, the distinguished key speakers to the OGTAN AGM 2024 lecture series, Our Lady of Erudition and friend of OGTAN, the Chair, Diversity SWG NCCF and Managing Director AAQ-TSALACH, Mrs. Alero Onosode, Mr. Chiwueze Ihebuzor, Manager, Process and Service Design Elections, Ontario, the immediate past Principal and Chief Executive of Petroleum Training Institute, Furunwari, Dr. Henry Adimula. And lastly, but definitely not the least, our engineer, Osayande Igiehon, an LOC stalwart who has just been introduced, MD and CEO, Heirs Energy. Our session moderator, the Lady of OGTAN, Mrs. Oluchi Okafor, MD Multimix Academy. Ladies and gentlemen of our esteemed association and industry participants, my great pleasure and privilege to welcome you to another session of our annual AGM lecture series with the theme, Consolidating Human Capital Development through Domestication of Skills. This is another thrilling OGTAN lecture series hosting a select group of experts, knowledgeable and highly experienced resource persons who have kindly volunteered to educate the OGTAN membership and the entire industry on topical issues of the energy industry, with special emphasis on how local availability and affordability of oil and gas industry skills will champion employment opportunities in and outside Nigeria and ownership of assets in the oil industry. This discourse is expected to cover topical issues like HCD as an enabler for addressing Japa syndrome or brain drain phenomenon, the challenges of attracting and keeping qualified and competent personnel in the Nigerian oil and gas sector, and the lure to Japa to greener pastures, as well as the Japa syndrome as an optimal path to growing our economy, being that oil and gas skills are a global currency, and also how to monetize the Japa syndrome within the energy sector via human capacity development. Obviously, the need to develop local human capital in the oil and gas sector cannot be overemphasized. And OGTAN, being purely a human capacity development initiative, cannot but be in the vanguard of programs and projects that will help the industry harness these potentials for growing both Nigerians and Nigeria professionally and economically, respectively. This is why OGTAN has developed a body of knowledge and commenced activities to promote domestication of skills in country via development of curriculums and schemes accredited both nationally and internationally to meet this need of the industry. Please visit the OGTAN website to see more on this via our body of knowledge section and see how you can be part of this growth process. Without taking the words out of the mouth of our distinguished speakers, I wish to declare open this lecture series and hand over to our moderator, who is already doing her job, to commence and continue this captivating session. I wish you all a productive and engaging time. Thank you, OGTAN President.
Thank you so much, sir.
Oluchi, back to you, please.
Thank you so much, sir. I really appreciate it. Ms. Olumagin, right over to you, please. You can go ahead and share your screen and start your presentation. Thank you.
I'll start first by saying good morning again to everyone, and standing on existing protocol, as we would say. On behalf of Mr. Igiehon, CEO of Heirs Energies, I'd like to, first of all, thank you for the invitation that was extended to him. I'm honored to be here with you today in his stead, and I bring you greetings from
Welcome back. You're on mute.
Pardon me, I was bumped
okay.
off the call.
That's okay.
There seems to have been a network issue. Just give me a few seconds, please.
The speaker is muted. Yeah.
Yes, it is. Pardon me. There's a little technical challenge. Please give me a minute. The network went out, came back, and it's. I need to reboot. Please hold on.
Not a problem.
I don't want that. I want it.
While we wait, I can see that a lot of introductions happening in the comment section and chat box. I really, really, truly appreciate that. Please let's also take this as a networking opportunity. Feel free to share your name and the company you're joining us from, so that we can all, get a sense of who is here and who is not. Not for any reason, but just, like I said, networking. You never know, someone might have been wanting to liaise with someone who works in your organization, and then it pops up in the comments and you can send a private message, and that's how networking gets done in virtual events such as this. So I'd like to really encourage everyone to please introduce themselves in the chat box. And I can see a lot of people from, say a couple of people from Futmina, I can see some people from the university side. Those are my people from the OGTAN Young Professionals Platform. Welcome, guys. I'm glad that you guys could join us. Ma'am, are you good now? I can see the screen, that's for sure. So I'm just trying to check if you're now fine to present.
Yes, Madam Oluchi.
Yes.
Please allow me to also mention that we have Professor Mike Onyekon and Mrs.
Welcome,
Michelle, Mrs. Michelle Ihebuzor here. Those are board
welcome, ma'am.
members.
Nice to have you both here with us. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much. Thank you, VP, for recognizing them, because I couldn't see them in the list. Thank you so much for joining us. We have a lot of dignitaries in the house, and I'd like to again stand on an existing protocol that the president has set up to welcome everyone to the room. Mr. Lumagi, are you good now?
I believe so. Can you confirm
Yes.
you can see my screen?
Yes, I can
And
see
you
it,
can
and I'm
see
sure
me.
everyone else
Okay,
can as well.
great.
Please go right
Pardon
ahead.
me.
No problem.
Okay. So I bring you greetings from Mr. Osayande, who unfortunately is unable to join us, regrettably so, because this is a subject that he's quite passionate about, human capital development in the industry. My name is Elue Olumagin. I'm the Vice President of Human Resources at Heirs Energies. And I'll be walking you through the presentation, the paper that Mr. Igiehon had prepared. The subject is one that we're all familiar with. I believe that everyone in the room, if we were to take a poll, either knows someone or knows of someone who has jackpot in the parlance that we use to describe the phenomenon. So the oil and gas industry is not exempted from this seeking other opportunities outside of our country. And so it's a topical issue and one that is of great importance to discuss. Okay. Apologies, my IT team flagged something now. Please, let me just carry on until they return. I don't know what the issue is, but can you confirm you can see my slides, please? Because I'm about to move forward.
Yes, please go right ahead, we can.
Okay, great. So, earlier this year, around February, there was a survey that was carried out among 14 operators, both IOCs and independents in Nigeria, just checking the same issue. The jackpot syndrome is real, and the businesses needed to know what's the impact on us as an industry. So from that survey, it was clear that yes, there's talent migration overseas, and it turns out to be one of the key drivers of attrition that they're beginning to see at higher levels than normal. So yes, it's happening. And why is it happening? The typical reasons that are adduced are that people are migrating because they're searching for a better future for their children. And that tells you something about the population that is greatly impacted by this. And it's no surprise then to see that it's the mid-career levels that this attrition is happening from. And that's where it becomes even a greater source of concern for us in the industry, because migration at this level means that the future, the succession pipeline, the next gen, they're leaving, even after the significant investment in learning and development, trying to get these people. We know how long the learning curve is for our industry. And so after all that time and investment on both sides, the companies are not able to take the benefit. And this creates an immediate challenge for continuity of operations, as well as the future assurance of the flow of talent. Please, I've just been flagged again to stop this. There seems to be a little issue. Please hold on, pardon me.
No problem, ma'am. Apologies for the setbacks. It's a virtual program. These things happen. So I'm sure we'll get back on it very soon. Please, by all means, share the link if you have it. Encourage people to register.
It's good now.
We're good? Okay, awesome. Go right ahead, please.
Okay. Please confirm that you can see my screen.
Yes, I can. Yes, we can.
Fantastic. Okay, great. So, oh my goodness, my goodness.
We can see something different now. I don't know if you're aware. I think you're opening notes, if I'm not wrong.
Okay. Please confirm that you can see the screen.
Yes, we can.
Apologies, my system is lagging. I don't know why, but let me just carry on with the conversation so that we can move quickly. So
yes,
we've established that our people are moving after significant investment in their development, and that poses a challenge for us as an industry. But is this the only challenge? Is this the only key driver for human capital, the issues with human capital development for us in the industry? It's one of the many issues, but there are key drivers behind the issue that I would like us to take a look at. And to do that, we'll have to take a walk back in our industry's history in Nigeria to be able to have that conversation. There's a lag on my screen. Sincere apologies. It's my system has decided to.
Sorry, ma'am. Is it possible for us to just have the presentation happen without the
Yes,
slides?
I'm going on without it. I'm going on
please.
without it.
Thank you.
So
You
if we take a walk, pardon me, Oluchi.
I said you can shut down the presentation if it's a problem and just speak to it so that we can take questions after. Thank you, ma'am.
After that, yes. So if we walk back to the 90s, the sunset that we're seeing today actually commenced way back at that time. So the industry is typical that you have all, cycles of high oil prices, low oil prices, and this started to get more frequent from the 90s. It's a resilient industry, and so we tend to bounce back each time. However, recovery following each cycle of low oil prices tends to be slower than the previous. But we continued, and in the early 2000s, if you recall, we had major FIDs in offshore, in deep offshore. That was when we really went into the deep offshore operations here in Nigeria, with a number of the majors foraying into the deep offshore. And this drove a lot of activity. The rig count peaked at about that period. And so with it came massive recruitment across those companies in the industry operating in Nigeria. It was mostly the majors that were in business, and there were talks of Nigerianization, getting more locals into jobs. And then there were capability gaps that were identified. And so there were capability acceleration initiatives that were put in place to close those gaps. Initiatives like the SITP by Shell, which not only contributed talent to their own operations, but to the industry in general. And that was replicated by the other majors. And these activities, period of peak activities in the industry, also presented opportunities for extensive development, both here and in international jobs at the parent offices and other locations where these majors operated in. And so there was an acceleration generally in talent development, and people got the opportunities to gain knowledge and critical field experience put into practice and learning on the job as activities were high. And then between 2000 and 2014, we had about 3 cycles of very low oil prices, the worst even getting down to about $20 per barrel. I'm sure we can remember that and the difficulties it caused in the industry. Coincidentally, within that period, around the 2000s, we saw the first onshore divestment by one of the IOCs, which birthed Seplat, one of the major independents in the country. So these cycles continued, and between from that time, after we saw the boom of offshore and deep offshore projects, there's really been no major discovery for decades. And there's been no major FID in the onshore space. And the implication of this is that activity is lulled for a bit. And when you have low activities, there's less opportunities for people to develop those competencies from the practical field experiences that those afford. And so this is what we begin to see now as an emerging challenge in deficiency in the leadership cadre across the industry. So people have clocked time on the job, time in role, acquired a lot of knowledge from classroom trainings and simulations across the industry. Some are lucky and have gotten application opportunities on the field, but largely there's that gap in the field opportunity, field experience opportunities. So this has led to a growing gap. In some niche skill areas, you find that the profiles of the professionals in that space are typically in the aging population, 50, 55 and above.
Let's stick to the house rules, people. Please. I really appreciate that. Secretariat, also please assist in muting participants, please. Thank you so much. Go ahead, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. So this gap was evident not just in those niche skill areas where real depth and practical experience is required, which has led to what we're seeing today. Like I was saying, you see more an aging population that have those skill sets across the industry, really. There's also that gap that's emanating in mature mid-career profiles with field experience. So we have the people who are invested in the knowledge training, but the field experience is lacking. And then that also has translated into a major gap in executive leadership succession. There's really no next gen standing behind the current cadre of leaders. If you look across the industry, it's troubling, and it's something that requires attention from the players in the industry. And so we see now, as the IOCs are retreating from onshore, offshore, and the independents are stepping forward to take on these assets, these challenges with human capability, competencies within the industry really then needs to receive heightened attention. And we know that the IOCs They're large, that's why they're majors. They afford,
081.
somebody is speaking. Okay, they afford you the opportunity to grow in depth in a particular area, replicated over different scenarios. They have the spread globally to be able to afford development opportunities for talent within the industry. But as we, the independents, step forward now and are taking on these assets, the play is shifting. However, the need to continue to develop talent remains a prerogative for the industry. And with the challenges that are outlined, it's clear that the imperatives are right before they're evident for us to see. And what are these imperatives? And as these transitions are happening, the assets are moving from the majors to the independents. Continued success in their operations will require the indigenous industry, the indigenous players, to pull together to create platforms that will enable us sustain a supply of skilled talent that would assure the manning of our operations, the safe manning of our operations, and also meet the needs for leadership succession. And the needs vary at different points in the career life cycle of an employee. What the graduate cadre requires is different from what the mid-career cadre requires, is different from what the technical specialists and experts require. It's different from what the executive leadership require. To address all of these, we have to look at what are the right actions that we can take, and we can pull together to have that critical mass and then enable the unlocking of these potentials across the industry. So first and foremost is the challenge that I mentioned earlier. We have people who have knowledge, so we need to move beyond classroom training. Moving beyond classroom training means moving towards experience-based learning. And what does this mean for OGTAN as a body? There's a charge here for OGTAN to look at this and the other imperatives that I'll be discussing, throwing more light on. How are we going to facilitate that common platform across the independents that will enable us provide that experience-based learning that is critical to the development of the right skills for us as we move forward with the assets that we're acquiring? Second critical imperative is the rebalance of our focus from greenfield, which has been the focus over time, to brownfield as it becomes more important. The assets that we're acquiring, a number of them are aged, and then it requires a level of brownfield excellence to be able to optimize value from these assets. And the skill sets that are required are a bit different, same but different in many respects. And that adaptation, we need to enable that transition from the greenfield think to brownfield excellence to be able to optimize value from these assets. So we need to refocus on brownfield capabilities. And then typically, as we see in larger organizations, the wider the opportunities, the narrower the focus areas. So as it's a larger organization, you focus on particular areas. So people have built depth in areas of specialization over time. But you don't have that kind of spread within an independent. And by its nature, capabilities that are required are more T-shaped, meaning you have the depth of your area and you have breadth. You understand the business, you understand how to join and connect the dots, you have capabilities to integrate the information you gather, you see the point of view of the different parts of the business, and you see how they are all joined up. So this doesn't occur naturally in all cases, and so we need to recognize that these capabilities need to be built, an understanding of the business, the different parts and how they join up, And so we need to help our people develop these capabilities. And that way, we will be able to unlock all the latent potential in these assets that we are acquiring. And so to achieve this, it needs to be a joint approach. We need to come together as an industry, particularly and specifically the indigenous operators in the industry. And the question is, how can OGTAN help facilitate this? Because the opportunities are huge. Doing nothing is not an option. It requires certain kind of skill to do what the majors were doing today. And with their retreat, there's a vacuum that's created. And this vacuum needs to be filled, and it needs to be filled quickly. How do we address this? And so the charge to OGTAN from Mr. Igiehon is that these 4 imperatives are what we need to take us forward, close that gap, even more critical than the JAPA, because when we're able to provide those opportunities for our people, then the lure to go out would be reduced. And these opportunities go beyond just the training, like I've said, experience-based learning, that's the bedrock of it. So how can OGTAN help facilitate that? What are the other opportunities that can be exploited or explored? How can that common platform take advantage of the opportunities in country and even out, so that it's not just 1 or 2 organizations that are going to be able to do that independently? We would need to come together to get that work done. And we're already beginning at Heirs to look at ways that we can do this. We're taking some low-hanging fruits already. Even as I speak, there's a program that's ongoing in line with what we're doing with these initiatives, which is collaborating on learning and development, the typical classroom training. So because we remain committed in investing in our people's development, and so we continue to look, identify opportunities, leverage those opportunities for collaboration in learning across the group, the industry. And that way we optimize value. The cost to each company is more reasonable, and we're able to tap into the diversities that exist across companies, the different experiences different operators have. So what we've done now, we've started to bring in programs, industry recognized programs, facilitated by international organizations. And we have the sessions run in country, and we have participants from across companies attending. We're going even further because some of these programs are cut to a particular format. We want those programs to be able to address the specificities of our need, particularly for brownfield development. And so we're asking these providers to partner with experts in country to ensure that those programs are adapted for brownfield operations, making it more targeted to our specific realities and needs. And so these are some of the initiatives that we've started, and we intend to continue to push at Heirs Energies, but for it to have greater impact and really address the needs at an industry level, we need a common platform. We need to coalesce as independents in this space and work on these imperatives. I'll stop here so that we can take comments and questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. That was so enlightening. And I especially liked that you also told us what your organization is doing, as well as charging us here at OGTAN on things that we can do to solve this very important problem. I'd like to take questions now, but like I said, for those who were not here when I gave the house rules, please utilize the button, the hand raising button, or use the chat box to leave questions. I'd also like to encourage us to leave our questions while the speaker is speaking, so that immediately he or she is done, we can go straight to the questions in the chat box and we're able to engage accordingly. But I think that was a fantastic presentation from you, ma'am. Despite the challenges of network, you were still able to give us a fantastic one, and I really appreciate that. We have Emmanuel Udofia raising his hand. Hello, sir. Could you go ahead and ask your question? Secretariat, please let's help unmute him if that's possible. You have the floor, sir. Go ahead, Mr. Emmanuel.
Okay, good morning, everybody. And good morning, madam, for taking the time to come around. And thanks to OGTAN for setting this up. I'm very happy that we're having this level of conversations. I'm a member of OGTAN, and my company or our company is called Sudesis Energy. We've done a lot in terms of training. You emphasize experience, and I'm proud to tell you that we have some of the best that have practiced in this industry. So what we really need to a large extent is collaboration. You mentioned you brought in experts from overseas. At times I struggle. I've worked with Shell, I've worked with ADAX, I've worked with Heritage. I mean, give us that first pass. Let's know what your need is. You are talking about a specific need. Of course, as I speak, there is a certain training that we offer. I will say we are the best sub-Saharan Africa. You talk about hydrocarbon accounting and fiscal metering. We are the best. I can say it anywhere. We talk about technology deployment. As I speak, I just published one of my books. I hope you can have a copy of it and look at it. It's a world-class book. But how do we have that opportunity to have that first-line engagement? Let's know your need. We'll come back to you, and we can come up with specific curriculum that addresses your asset-specific need. Because at times, this is not a one-size-fits-all. But we were talking about the issue. For me, the key thing is that let's have that engagement. Let's know what you really need. And I believe you might not have that need to go outside to bring people. And the issue again, when people talk about Ajapa syndrome, for me, I see that as an option. Countries like India, China, they make a lot of money from the Japa syndrome. So we need to start building that internal capacity to bring people up to that level where they can perform anywhere in the world. And OGTAN is there. Like I just mentioned, my company, I'm a member of OGTAN. We can work with you and get that sorted out. I hope I'm not spending so much time.
And that's why my video is on, sir, because I wanted to ask if we could please let her answer the question. Thank you so much, sir. Ma'am, I'd like to add a question to here so that we can wrap up on your end. The second question I have in the chat box is, what are the knowledge vacuums observed by the independents? I don't know if that question, if you understand what they mean by that. What are the knowledge vacuums observed by the independents? Yeah, that's the question. I'm not sure. I don't know if you can do much with it, but yeah, you can answer Mr. Emmanuel's question and then this one as well. Thank you. Go ahead. Muted, ma'am. You're muted.
Thank you, Mr. Emmanuel. And I missed the name of the person who asked the question online. So let me take a comment on Emmanuel's question. Like you rightly pointed out, collaboration is key. While it is useful to get individual companies' needs, those needs will continue to be addressed individually, but there's an industry challenge, like I pointed out in the imperatives, that we need to address, and we need to address collectively. I think that's where the huge value will come from. So OGTAN as a body might be a good idea to engage with the IPPG, the independent producers body, and discuss at a strategic level what are those areas that need to be addressed in priority, and then a solution at the industry level would be more far-reaching and more impactful. It takes away competition, because there's no sense in competition at this point. We're suffering the same thing. And very quickly, we need to scale up capabilities, and it's best we come together to get that done. And it's impressive what you've described that your company does, and I encourage you to continue to do so. The idea of bringing in facilitators for programs that are known and recognized and certified from outside is not because we do not believe that our people can do it. And that's why we're also, through this process, ensuring that there's a handshake with our experts here in Nigeria through bringing in that brownfield perspective, but also rubbing off on each other, and then developing capabilities locally also. So collaboration always helps. It's not all the time that addressing needs individually or trying to solve problems individually would help, particularly when we're talking about a sector scale challenge like we're facing. Knowledge vacuums observed, the second question. It's more the learning by doing, the opportunities to learn by doing that were absent because activities in the industry are slowed down for a long while. It's now that you're beginning to see increasing rig counts again. Things were very quiet. When was the last time any company carried out exploration activities? So you have a whole crop of people who have the technical knowledge, but they may have worked with simulators, but they've not had the field experience. That's what is missing. It's not the knowledge, it's the experience, because in the industry, knowledge and experience go hand in hand to build capabilities to the level for autonomous delivery. I hope I've answered that question.
Thank you so much. Please, I'd like us to use that same chat box to send Ms. Olumagni some encouraging words, and to let her know, if you can put a round of applause as you can, just to let her know that she's done an amazing job, and to thank her for taking the time to spend these few minutes with us this morning. Thank you so much, ma'am. We really do appreciate it. If we have any more questions, I hope we can send them to you for answers.
Certainly. I will hang around a bit longer so that I can also benefit from what others are saying.
I highly encourage that. Thank you so much.
I apologize for the technical difficulties at first.
Totally fine. We totally understand. These things happen. Thank you so much. All right. So we're going to move.
Sorry, Oluchi, if I may interject. Yeah, thank you, Madam Elue, for a wonderful presentation and the opportunity for collaboration. That's actually why we hold these type of sessions. We've been engaging individually, all the IOCs, and I think we're now trying to do it on a more general level. So OGTAN will take you up on that offer for collaboration. We need to come so you understand what we are doing. I would also like you to take a look at our body of knowledge section of our website, so you can see some of the things we have done already. We've been able to do a synergy between NCDMB, MBTE, and OGTAN, and we've commenced the development of national operational standards, which we intend to now take to the next level by internationally accrediting these programs to ISO 17024. So it will be good to take on board some of your areas of need. I think just like one of us was asking about what are the skills gap areas you are looking at. I understand you are talking about the hands-on knowledge, the hands-on experience rather than just the textbook knowledge. But we also need to know which areas are you really lacking human capacity, so that we could begin to work with you to develop standards, curriculums, and schemes to address those needs. So thank you once again, and our best regards to our big boss. You guys are doing well. Bye now. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. I'd like to call on our second speaker for today, Mr. Chiwueze Ihebuzor, and I will go right ahead into reading his abridged profile. Mr. Ihebuzor is a digital strategist and a people-centric leader in strategic innovation with over 12 years of expertise in spearheading transformative initiatives across the public administration, financial services, and technology sectors. Currently, Chiwueze serves as Acting Director of Design and Strategic Innovation at Elections Ontario, which is one of North America's largest election management bodies. His leadership has revolutionized electoral processes, significantly enhanced voter accessibility and satisfaction, while maintaining the integrity of the electoral systems. As the current chair of the Innovation Committee, he is involved in leading strategic initiatives to drive innovation within the organization. Prior to this role, Mr. Chiwueze was a senior manager of disruption and innovation at PricewaterhouseCoopers Experience Center in West Africa, and he played a pivotal role in building client trust, navigating disruptive forces, and formulating tailored strategies that leverage disruptions for competitive advantage. His academic achievements include a Master of Science in E-Business Strategy and Systems and a Bachelor of Engineering in Computer Science and Electronics from the University of Liverpool. He further enhanced his credentials and with certifications from prestigious institutions like Harvard Business School and INSEAD in strategic change management, project management, innovation management, and business analytics. He resides in Toronto with his wife and two daughters, where he is an active member of the community, continually seeking to connect and collaborate. And today, the topic he will be covering is Nigerian brain exports, the optimal path for growing the Nigerian economy. Hello, Mr. Chiwueze. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, Oluchi. Good morning. Can you hear me?
Good morning. Yes, loud and clear. The floor is yours, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm just going to put up my presentation now. Good morning,
Okay,
everyone.
you have 15 minutes, sir, please.
All right. I'll try and keep it brief.
Thank you.
Okay. Can you confirm you can see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you. So I'm just going to put this on presentation mode. Please allow me to stand on existing protocols to just say thank you for the opportunity to be here to give this presentation. Thank you to the previous speaker as well. I think I also learned a lot from that conversation. So it's really a privilege and an honor to be here. So like Oluchi has said, my topic is on brain exports, the optimal path to growing the Nigerian economy. And it's important that I set some context here, because the first time we published this article, this was while I was in PwC, we got a lot of pushback to say that, are we saying other parts are not good and things like that. I just want to clarify that when this article was put out, we were suggesting that this is an optimal path, not the only path, but an optimal path. So it's important that I make that clear. And by optimal, we're looking at it from a speed perspective in terms of how quickly we can get Nigeria to a global superpower status. And that is essentially the sort of the pretext or the question that led to the sort of development of this article and this presentation I'm delivering right now. So how can Nigeria achieve global economic superpower status in the next 10 to 20 years? So first things first, let's get a sense of where we are right now. So Nigeria currently earns FX through exporting crude products. I mean, these numbers are as of 2023. So our top exports are really essentially around the oil and gas space, which is $52 billion in crude petroleum, 6.8 billion in petroleum gas, and 1.06 billion in mineral, chemicals, and fertilizers, and etc. Now, while this looks good from a from a numbers perspective, it's important to mention that these numbers don't take into account the net cost of doing these exports, and which I'll get into later. But the idea is that there are some challenges associated with earning FX this way as an economy, and having this as the only source. I mean, as the top three, I mean, 52 billion represents almost like 80% of all our exports as a country, which I feel is very high to sort of put that in one specific space or one specific industry. Now, the current economic or the existing paths to development that most countries like maybe China, Taiwan, and Korea use is they typically start from agricultural production, and then, that's farming and, in some cases mechanized farming. And then they go into sort of low value manufacturing, which is where they start sort of processing those goods that they farmed. And then before they then sort of transcend to high end value manufacturing, in the case where we see China today producing things like iPhones and stuff like that. They didn't start off that way. They started through agriculture, and they sort of built that capability up all on the way, all to the way where they are now sort of exporting sort of high value products. The challenge with this approach is that while this worked back then in centuries ago, it's not the most sort of ideal path right now, and that's because obviously we've advanced a lot from a technology perspective. There are things that are going on nowadays or now that were not sort of possible in the past. And there are some challenges with this part. I mean, the first is that it's time consuming. So if you look at the case of China and how long it took them to get to where they are now, we certainly don't want to wait that long. If you look at the return on investment in terms of how much we're actually sort of it's costing us to make these to earn these FX from crude, it's a lot. And if you look at our infrastructure perspective, the fact is that we're not quite there yet from if we want to focus on manufacturing, and in the sense that we need a lot of investments to get if we want to go through agriculture, to get the farms up to speed, to get to produce at the scale as China and to be competitive as those countries who are doing that. So while we're not, I'm not saying that this path isn't a path to explore. We're just saying it isn't the optimal path, and there perhaps is another sort of path that we could look into. This path is also very highly capital intensive, and there's a lot of investment required both from local players and foreign players as well. So this next slide just really says that, yes, we know that Nigeria has a lot of high potential to earn income from the downstream oil sector, from the hydrocarbon sector, from the agriculture sector. I mean, there's a lot of potential, especially in the agriculture sector, where a report from PwC said that we are sort of on course to get to about 59 billion in exports in agriculture by 2030, up from 8 billion in 2014. So there's a lot of potential there. But the question that was at the back of our mind when we were putting this report together was, can we explore another path or another area that will benefit the Nigerian economy in a shorter period of time? Because again, we don't want to wait, as long as China did and as long as the other sort of countries that went to the traditional path did, right? So we want to move very quickly. And I want to highlight this case, which is the Dangote refinery. Now, from a timing perspective, we know that this refinery took longer than expected. I think it took about 10 years to complete. Yes, it's up and running now, and that's great. But if you think about how long it took, and if you think about the investment that it took, I think the total cost was around 20 billion, but it was actually budgeted to be about 9 billion. So that's an additional 19, which is a lot. And then from an ESG perspective as well, I mean, while I fully appreciate that Nigeria still has to, obviously, we're not quite there where we want to be focusing on ESG as a major driver for business or a major driver for opportunities. That being said, if you're trying to attract foreign investments, a lot of the foreign investments, do favor more sort of greener projects and greener investments. So in terms of attracting capital, it's not for lack of a better word, it's not the most appealing to investors who are conscious about being green. So that's manufacturing, and whether that's in the form of from an oil and gas perspective or from an agriculture perspective. So I just wanted to highlight this case study. So while it's a great, it's great news that we have the refinery up and running, it wasn't without challenges. And again, we're talking about Dangote, who's somebody has a lot of pull, has a lot of connection. And if he can sort of go through the same process, if it can take him this long, then what hope do the regular folk like you and I have, right? So just wanted to highlight that to just paint the picture that we are sort of in a position where we there's not a lot of there are a lot of challenges to implementing or investing heavily on capital intensive projects that support manufacturing and things like that. So this next slide just speaks to how we can potentially earn income or earn FX, but through a different way, and that different way is through remittances. So what we have here is a chart that compares remittances and sort of the percentage of GDP that they contribute to. That's on the first chart. And then the second chart is actually comparing income from remittances against the net revenues or the net income from oil. So again, taking out the cost of production. And what it's clear to see is that even during the period of COVID, remittances were still resilient. They didn't sort of take a hit, while other sectors such as the oil and gas did, right? Or not just oil and gas, even the agriculture sector. Most sectors took a hit, but remittances were steady and they were coming in. So that's a sector that perhaps could be a way forward, or that's an area that we want to explore a bit further. So given the urgent capital constraints, there is a promising path which Nigeria can take to reach its economic goal, and that is also consistent with ESG principles. Now, there are 4 key trends that are supporting this path that we're suggesting, which is the first is remote work, right? So we know with COVID that accelerated, digital transformation and the ability for people to work virtually, and I guess it had organizations thinking in a different way about work and things like that. So that's a trend that supports the path that we're suggesting, which is brain exports. We'll get to that definition as we go along. The other part is outsourcing, which is that companies nowadays, obviously, they don't, they want to focus on their core competencies and outsource the other skills that, perhaps is not a core skill for their business, right? So that's a trend that is happening. It's been happening for a while now. There's also global fight for talent. So in the past, Nigerians would compete for jobs, and employers would compete with talent within a local pool. But right now, due to the advancements in tech, the internet, the pool of talent is not just limited to the local pool. It's actually more extended. It's more broadened, and people can actually hire people from different parts of the world, and just gives you more variety, more options. And then there are also technology advancements that sort of underpin all this. Technology advancements enable the ability for us to do remote work, allow for easy outsourcing and monitoring of things that are outsourced, and things like that. So Nigeria is actually in a unique position to take advantage of this, because we have a a large youth population. The median age is 18, and that size of the population keeps growing compared to these other nations, these other more developed nations that have an aging population. So what we're essentially saying is, how can we insert Nigerians in global value chains so that they can contribute and earn income or earn FX that could be sent back home in the form of remittances? And just to define, I won't sort of go through everything on this slide, but just to define what global value chains are, like they refer to like an international production sharing, where different parts of production, or different parts of your production line are located in different countries, and each sort of country is adding value in its own unique way. So the question is, how can we sort of tap into these global value chains as a nation? And the best thing about global value chains is that you can actually participate without leaving your country, and that is where the concept of brain exports gets interesting. So we're not saying, or we're not supporting that people should japa. I mean, of course, everyone is entitled to do what they want with their lives, but we're approaching this from a position of how can we insert ourselves into these GVCs without actually leaving the country. So here are some examples of some Nigerians who have sort of tapped into global value chains, and you can see the earning potential is quite high. So these numbers are probably outdated at this point, because when the report came out in 2022. So I imagine these numbers have significantly increased. But yeah, you see, I mean, if those of us who are into music, we know Thames, we know Wizkid. If you're into football, Kelechi Iheanacho, how much he earns. If you're into NBA, Giannis, who plays for the Milwaukee Bucks, and how much he earns. And we know Toby Amosun, the athlete who won at the 2022 World Athletics competition. So the idea is that if these guys were stayed local, or if they stayed within the Nigerian sort of confines, would they, the question is, would they have earned this sort of income? Maybe, but I guess the answer is probably not. And so I guess what we're saying is the ability for these individuals to tap into global value chains has significantly increased their earning potential. Now we're proposing, or we're recommending, that if Nigeria wants to take this as an approach, then they focus on 4 major sectors to look into inserting talent, or to look into inserting people into these global value chains. The first one is around outsourcing. So in terms of outsourcing your software development or your IT capabilities, and just being able to train talent or invest in talent that can stay in Nigeria physically, but also provide global sort of programming, IT outsourced services to players outside, or to companies outside the country. The second one is around animation and gaming, which is a growing space right now. And again, this is an area where people can earn income, earn FX, and contribute to the country. The other one is business process outsourcing. So in terms of having a legal person that represents your organization in a different location, in a different jurisdiction, or even having an accountant that maybe works out of Ghana, or works for your organization, or works from Nigeria for an organization somewhere else, right? And then earns FX and brings that money back home. And the third is call center outsourcing, which is, like we all know, just being able to provide support, or provide call center support for organizations while being in Nigeria. And I think there was someone who spoke, who asked the question, who also indicated that India is doing this already, and they've been doing this for a while, right? So, and they're being they've been quite successful with these. So these are the 4 areas that we think would have the most impact if Nigerians are inserted into. Now, the interesting thing about these 4 areas is that they don't require a formal education, so you don't need to go to university to learn how to write code. You don't need to go to university to learn how to build games or, animations. You don't need to go to university to get to be a lawyer or to be an accountant. And the same thing for call center. What you need is just basic certifications, basic skills training. Now, I'm not in any way advocating that no one should, people should not go to, university. I think it's very important. It's a great way to network beyond what you're also learning in school. But it's just also important to know that while these university programs take a long period of time and also require some significant investment, these sort of areas that we're recommending do not require that length of time and do not also require that amount of investments that traditional education or traditional universities would have. So we have a unique sort of advantage in the sense that we have Nigerians that are already inserting themselves. I mean, Nigerians are already self-organizing by nature, right? So they're already inserting themselves into these value chains, into these global value chains. And then we asked a few of them, like this was in 2022, of course, I have to give that context. So we asked a few of them in terms of, what are you finding from being inserted in these global value chains? What are your difficulties? What are your challenges and things like that? And these were some of the things that they said, right? So a lot of them, they do it because of the prospect of earning foreign currency, right? Which obviously you bring that back to Nigeria. That's, you're a big boy, you're balling. The other part is we asked them if power supply is a major challenge for them. And interestingly, a lot of them said no, because a lot of them, like I said, Nigerians are sort of organizing by nature. A lot of them already have their own generator sets. So power is not an issue for them, right? So in terms of if we thought that was a problem, a significant problem for inserting people into these value chains, it's not. And even if it is, it's a problem that can easily be solved with smaller sort of just a bit creative thinking. I mean, we're not trying to solve NEPA here, but we're just trying to enable people power a laptop to be able to plug into global value chain, right? That's all. We're not trying to solve power. We're not saying that, you're going to give power to everybody in Nigeria. We know that, of course, that's going to take some time. And we asked an interesting question, and we said, so what's your plan? Do you want to stay in Nigeria? Do you want to, migrate to the company that you're working for remotely after, maybe after a few years? And interestingly, about 30% of them said no, they would not. They would rather stay in Nigeria. They have no intentions. I mean, of course, a majority said that yes, eventually that they would want to leave, but and majority of them do actually want to stay behind, and that's because obviously Nigeria is home. It's the food is great, the weather is great, and it's like I said, it's home, right? So a lot of people don't actually want to leave if they can stay physically in the country and work remotely and earn FX. You would find that a lot of people would actually want to stay behind. So the question then becomes, how do we create that enabling environment? Now, what came out as a major issue when we spoke to them was internet penetration and the ability to connect. So that was a problem. So even the guys with who were earning a lot, they still struggled with internet connection, particularly when they went to remote areas. Maybe when they went home for Christmas, they couldn't connect for meetings. They had challenges, delivering on work and things like that. So internet penetration is very key for it's an area where we need to invest significantly if we want to sort of adopt the strategy of inserting Nigerians into global value chains. Now, another important aspect, to consider with regards to being able to insert Nigerians into global value chains is the concept of brain capital. So brain capital is essentially a measure of the health of a brain of an individual, and it takes into account three areas, three considerations. The first is, what's this person's technical skills? What are the skills that he has to offer? If he's a accountant, what sort of skills does he have from an accounting perspective? Is he certified? Is he ICANN? Is he ACCA and stuff like that? Does he have good mental health? So, and I mean, this is something that sometimes we often overlook in Nigeria, but again, that also goes to the resilience of Nigerians as individuals, right? So how is that person performing from a mental health perspective? And then the third aspect is, does he have the appropriate soft skills to be able to sort of participate in these global value chains? As you can imagine, it's, you're working remote for companies overseas. There are different cultural considerations to keep in mind. There are different etiquettes and that are sort of different from Nigeria. And or from the way we work in Nigeria. And we just have to have that at the back of our mind and keep that in mind when we're interacting in this global value chain. So these three sort of separate factors all contribute into sort of this brain capital. And Nigeria has a lot of brain capital. If you think about the size of the country, the size of the youth population, and what some of the things that we hear that people are doing, even Nigerians who have even sort of gone abroad and things like that. So there's a lot of brain capital here. And the question then becomes, how can we take the step further to export this brain capital without the talent leaving the country? And that is where we then come to this definition of what brain export is. So brain export occurs when a Nigerian physically in Nigeria is inserted into global value chains in exchange for their brain capital for foreign currency. So that is essentially what brain export is. It's not some surgery where we're taking out a brain from someone, as we got some feedbacks from some people who thought that was what we were referring to, but it's definitely not that. And we're just saying, how can Nigerians sort of be inserted into global value chains without leaving the country, and in doing so earn significant effects for the country? So we have, like I've been saying, we have a brain capital advantage in the sense that majority of the population is under 30. So from in terms of a software development perspective, I think there are about 89,000 programmers, or whether that's database programmer, whether that's someone who builds websites. They have over 89K of those in Nigeria. And from a minimum wage perspective, I mean, I know this is a sensitive topic at this point, but I think the point here I'm trying to make is that it's not, we can actually provide these services at a fair rate, at a rate that is, competitive enough to at least make Nigerians who want to be inserted in these global value chains more attractive to the employers. There's also the fact that we speak English as a country, as our national language. So in terms of communication, that shouldn't be a problem, naturally. And then depending on where you want to be inserted into, I think our time zone is also quite favorable. I mean, in terms of being able to work with people in different time zones and different regions of the world as well. So what are the benefits of this strategy? Well, it requires lower investments as opposed to traditional, investing in traditional manufacturing. It's less risky because it's decentralized. There are different sectors, there are different areas you can, insert these brains into or export these brains into. And the proposed strategy, we don't think, again, with the right amount of investment, with the right amount of sort of interest, especially from our leaders, then, we think this is something that if there's a lot of focus on this, we can actually achieve this development in record time, which 10 to 20 years, which we feel, I mean, yes, we can also achieve this with manufacturing and investing in the manufacturing sector. But the question we should ask ourselves is, if we wanted to do that and really do that at scale and in a competitive manner, how long would it actually really take us, right? So we're saying this strategy is a much more shorter approach. So I'm just going to talk briefly about some countries who have actually done this and have succeeded. So India, like the gentleman who asked who contributed earlier, they've been doing this for a while now, and they've achieved great success, right? So they've in terms of how much they've earned, or they've earned significant amount of money from just inserting their people into these global value chains. And there's no reason why Nigeria cannot do this. So there's no reason why Nigeria cannot be the African version of India, right? In the sense of being that nation or that hub that is known for exporting talents without the talents physically leaving the country, right? Now, if we think India is too far-fetched, or it's a different continent, Kenya is actually doing something similar as well. And I mean, Kenya's case has been so successful that they had initially planned on just inserting 7,500 people into these global value chains, and they wanted to achieve this by 2030. But that number has gone up now. They want to do, because they've achieved that number already. Now they're looking at doing 250,000 before 2030. And if you think about the impact that could have on their economy, it's huge, right? So I know that I'm short for time, but I'll just try to wrap this up very quickly. So why was Kenya successful? They had government support. They have a young and skilled population, which we have. They also speak English as a language as well. So again, from a similarity perspective, there's nothing too dissimilar between us and Kenya. And this is a strategy that we can adopt. And if it's adopted at scale, it's something that we can really benefit from as a nation. We have some players in Nigeria currently also, that are specialized in helping or exporting these brains at the moment. I will just talk about them briefly. So we have tech experts, we have Outsource Global, we have we have ISON Experience, and these are all organizations that are in some way or some form bring in talent, train them, and then sort of outsource those talents to be able to work for companies remotely, and obviously they take a cut from that as well. And the idea is that the talent then earns FX, brings that FX back home, spends locally, and it contributes to the development of the economy. So it's already happening. So it's not like we're saying anything brand new here. What we're saying is just how can we scale this up to a point where to a point like how where India is with their outsourcing practice. And if you look at the global sort of landscape, I mean, players like Google and Microsoft are already sort of betting big on this what I call a future of work, or the ability to export brains. I mean, Google, for instance, has increased the internet speeds, and they want to continue, they want to continue doing that. So that's an area of investment that they're going to continue doing in terms of improving connectivity, improving speeds, improving access, and things like that. So that helps us. Microsoft, from a capacity development perspective, they want to upskill people with some of these technical skills that are required that are required to function in these global value chains. They want to train about 27,000 people, or give opportunities to 27,000 people to be able to insert themselves in the global value chain. So what this is telling us is that the players like Google and Microsoft already know or see Nigeria as this hub, or this nation that is a hub of great talent, and they want to milk that. So if they're doing that, then why shouldn't we as a nation sort of have again, I'm not saying this should be the focus in terms of maybe this should be the number one strategy, but maybe it could be number two, it could be number three, right? So it's a low-hanging fruit that we can easily sort of tap into, especially when we have partners or potential partners who are already sort of ahead or making progress in those areas. And then this slide here was just really to show from a cost perspective how much it would cost to equip maybe somebody who wants to work at the Dangote refinery versus how much it would cost to equip somebody who wants to be inserted in global value chains. And I mean, again, I'm not trying to downplay any industry or anything like that. What we're just trying to highlight here is the fact that one is cheaper and one is more expensive, and one of them has potential to earn FX in a way that doesn't attract the same cost as the other, right? So that's the message here. So it's just to say that the investment required is significantly lower with this approach. And then we had sort of ended this by recommending that Nigeria takes a stand or has an ambition to insert at least 2 million Nigerians in global value chains. And this is something that doesn't have to happen at once. It could happen over a period of time. It could happen spread across different states. Maybe one state could be this. Maybe Lagos State is a known state for call center outsourcing. Abuja is the state for animation, and we give targets like maybe each state has to do 5,000 a year or something like that. So I guess what I'm trying to say here is that these numbers are achievable, and if we take a conscious effort towards doing this, then there's potential to earn significant effects for the nation as well. So with regards to what needs to happen to move this forward, so there are four things that need to happen. The first is investment in broadband. So we need to ensure that we have the internet, good enough internet to be able to compete, to be able to connect, and to be able to provide value-added services to these GBCs. We need government initiatives and policies that support these sort of things. For instance, if you think about devices, devices shouldn't be expensive if you want people to actively take this on as a way forward, right? So maybe some sort of tax waiver for electronic devices or devices that enable people connect to the internet, or maybe some sort of subsidy around that, right? And that's an approach that maybe the government can consider. The other thing that needs to happen is power, right? But again, this is not power from a NEPA perspective, but trying to think about how we can enable people to be able to power their machines to tap into these GBCs, right? Whether that means maybe coming up with solar devices, handheld solar devices, or something that anyone can use from anywhere and just have access, right? Without necessarily maybe trying to think about it from a solving NEPA or PHCN perspective. And then the other part is brain capital, which we spoke about in terms of being able to invest in that brain capital. When we talk about brain capital, we mentioned those three things, right? The technical skills, which can come from things like certifications, which can come from things like doing professional courses, professional programs, and some of I mean, there's nothing stopping organizations from like OGTAN from being able to sort of have these courses and have people trained and certified in these courses, right? The other aspect of brain capital is the mental health bit, right? And that often gets overlooked, but it's something that, again, particularly in this digital age, is something that we need to invest some time or invest some effort in trying to sort of think about and trying to help people with mental health challenges. And the problem is that this is not a very obvious challenge, and it's something that we just need to pay closer attention to. And then the final part is around the soft skills, which is around being able to blend into these global value chains, coming from Nigeria, and just considering the etiquettes and the different cultures in the working environments that we want to be inserted into. So my final slide here is just the core takeaways here, which really just says, and again, just reiterates the message that we're trying to send here. So yes, we know that countries like Taiwan, China, they went through the traditional path of achieving that global power, global super status, or growing their economy. But we're saying that we don't have to take that long. We don't have to. I mean, the investment required for that is high, and that there's an alternative, which, or maybe not an alternative. There's something that we could also be doing on the side while we're investing in that. We also know that we have a young, vibrant population that presents a great advantage for us to be able to export and to be known as that hub in Africa for being able to export brains or export talents without leaving the country. And then the cash from remittances, again, we've seen, they are more resilient. And again, if we scale that, it's something that could actually have a significant impact on our economy, especially when you think about the cost associated with it, which is like I hope I've tried to demonstrate here, not as significant as as the cost required from a traditional manufacturing standpoint. So that's it from my end. I'm sorry if I went over time, but yeah, I'm happy to take questions if there are any.
Thank you so much. Yes, you did go over time, but I had to let you finish because it's such an important topic. And first of all, thank you. So enlightening. I'm sure if you go to the comment section, you can see that everybody pretty much thinks same. It's so interesting that this report was from 2012, because I think that now, 10 years later, 12 years later, a lot has changed, but I'm particularly passionate about global value chains and how Nigerians can plug in. And, I know a lot of people who are currently plugged in who do remote work for, international companies within the EMEA region. And, they're thriving at it. And, and it's such a valid option rather than uprooting your entire life, like you said, to go somewhere else. I really, really appreciate this presentation. Thank you so much. I'm going to go right into the first two questions I have. Because of time, I will ask the first two, and then everyone else, please just put it together and we will give it to the speaker and we'll send the answers to you. So someone said, sir, you made mention of remittance when you were comparing the stability of our revenue source during COVID. What does remittance mean? Also, sir, you mentioned that the power is not a problem given that majority of people have generators in their household. However, the cost of fueling the generators is also a big hindrance. To be fair, just for the power perspective, I think that if you're being offered a certain kind of job that pays you in FX, you will make the trade-off to buy fuel if it gets to that. So I think that's probably what he meant around that. So that's the first question. The second one is talking about global value chains and exploitation of brain capital. As learning facilitators and training providers, as the member companies of OGTAN, what sort of role or opportunity would you say exists for OGTAN members? I'd like you to bring it home and make this more relevant to OGTAN. So the two questions are basically around remittance and power. And the second question is for us in the oil and gas industry who are trainers and facilitators, how do we benefit from this? So over to you.
Awesome. Okay, so I'll tackle the first question. So remittances is essentially when somebody earns no, it's not even on anything. When somebody sends back foreign currencies from overseas to Nigeria into a Nigerian bank account, so that's remittances. Well, so whether that's in the form of a salary, somebody's paying you, whether that's in the form of maybe you sending or somebody sending money to their loved ones from from the abroad and things like that. So anything that comes in from a foreign any FX that comes into the country from a foreign source can be considered as remittance. The second question around power. No, I'm not underestimating the power problem in Nigeria. I know it's a huge one, but what I was saying is for this particular case, for being able to insert talent into GVCs, generators is one option. But if you think about it, again, the power we need is just power to power a laptop, maybe a USB modem to connect to the internet or a dongle or something, and you know, maybe a big screen or something like that. So it's not even generator sort of status power. It's something like like a solar device or a solar handheld, you know, and that doesn't cost any fuel. But I'm going to Oluchi's point. If you do earn FX, and then I guess, you know, that might not be a problem. But obviously we don't want to encourage over, you know, pollution and things like that. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that there are alternative sources of power that we can consider that are fossil friendly, that are not fossil fuel, and can also serve the need that the people need, which is just to, again, have a laptop that connects to the internet and you can work with. So it doesn't have to be at the scale of a generator, like, you know what I mean? And then the third question around OGTAN specifically, and how the role that, or the benefit, I think OGTAN as a training institute has a lot to offer here, because one, you can actually be the source of that knowledge, or the source of that training for people who want to be inserted into GVCs, right? Whether that's an accountant in the oil and gas space who wants to, you know, provide that sort of service to to a different organization abroad. You can also, OGTAN also has a role to play from a certifications perspective, right? So I know that the chairman talked about the ISO, I can't remember the standard now, the certification that is currently being worked on. So that's great. Imagine if that's, I mean, ISO is an international recognized standard already, right? So having that certificate or having that seal of approval from OGTAN, you know, that means you're easily inserted. You know, it's a seal of approval. It's a check mark, right? And it just adds, or it lends to your credibility. So if OGTAN can get that, that would be awesome. And then the other thing is, I know that, again, specifically for the oil and gas field, I know that some of the jobs can be done remotely, but most of them are actually done, you know, from a physical perspective, which is fine. And we're not saying don't focus on training on those jobs, but maybe focus on providing value to these other sort of software or jobs that could be done remotely, and maybe providing certification around those specific jobs. I mean, those are just some of the ways that I think OGTAN could play a role in this. But again, this is just thinking off the top of my head. But yeah, it's an interesting conversation, and one that, you know, we can definitely take offline if required.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ihebuzor. Just to add, I completely agree with you as to the fact that the softer parts of the industry, so to speak, the other softer skills, or the skills that are not as hard, and like the plumbing and the welding, there are so many other parts of the industry that actually we are not upskilling our people for, and that this will definitely come in handy to make them viable candidates for, you know, the global value chain. So I would like to say massive thank you. I know that we have a lot of young people on here from our OGTAN Young Professionals platform who have joined, and I know that this will be very, very helpful for them. I'd like to encourage them, if they're here, to do some more research of their own. We can't feed you everything here. So do some more research on your own and kind of understand what the global value chain is, what the skills that are needed are, and then find ways to start to educate yourself. YouTube is free. So many other things are free. You don't have to necessarily pay for a course. So I'd like to encourage them to do that. Mr. President, I know you probably want to say something, so I'm going to pause and let you do that before I move on to the next speaker. Are you there, sir?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Oluchi and Chiwueze. That's fantastic. You epitomize that which makes Nigeria proud. We are happy with you. We are very proud of you. And obviously, this is a low-hanging fruit. We can see it clearly. It does not require massive investments or massive capital, and Nigerians are gifted. So, I mean, this is basically our best approach to earning foreign currency. We will be engaging you more on this. Our time is running far short, but we know that what you have said is making a lot of sense. And OGTAN is actually, just like you also noted, working towards ensuring that there are globally competitive certification schemes that can launch our people into as no longer as illegal immigrants, but as legal migrants, professional migrants. You know, so want to jackpot as professionals, because it's a money spinner. So thank you for sharing your ideas. We are grateful. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for having me, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much again, Mr. Ihebuzor. Thank you so much. And we're going to go right into the next speaker. Okay, there is the profile. And our next speaker is Dr. Henry A. Adimula, who had his university education at the University of Ilorin, where he graduated with a BSc Chemistry and MSc Chemistry as well. For his doctoral degree, he studied at the University of Benin, where he earned his PhD in 2010 with specialization in the modifications and applications of biopolymers. He has had a distinguished career at the Petroleum Training Institute, Ephraim, where he is, by virtue of his hard work and outstanding contributions to the progress and actualization of the objectives of the Institute, he has held various positions of impact that transformed the Institute. And as the Director of Research and Development, he established a 5-year plan for transforming the research culture of the Institute and created research clusters to address the various technological challenges of the oil and gas industry, with a goal to developing homegrown technology and to deepen the Nigerian content in the oil and gas industry. He rose to the headship of the Petroleum Training Institute, having been appointed by the Governing Council of the Institute in June 2021. As principal, he has promoted and nurtured harmonious relationships with OGTAN and other critical stakeholders in HCD in the Nigerian petroleum industry. He's married and blessed with children. I can personally attest to this harmonious relationship that has been built. And Dr. Adimula will be speaking on using human capacity development to monetize the Japa syndrome, the energy sector as a case study. Doctor, welcome. Thank you for joining us. I'd like to please ask for your indulgence in terms of time. First of all, is he here? I feel like I'm talking to myself. Hello, Doctor, are you there?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I'd like to please crave your indulgence in terms of time. We had planned to close at 1. We're probably going to stretch it to 1:15, and we still have another speaker. So once you see my face on, because I'm going to turn it off now, it means that you have a few minutes to round up. So thank you so much, Doctor. And like I said, I can attest to the harmonious relationship that you've created between PTI and OGTAN, and we're super grateful for that. The floor is yours, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Hello.
Can you hear me, sir? Hello?
Yes. Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, sir.
Hello? Hello? Yes, you can hear me. Thank you very much for the wonderful, kind introduction and whatever we have been able to achieve with OGTAN. Let me apologize. I'm finding difficulty sharing my slides from here, but I forwarded the slide to my contact. So, can I continue?
Please, sir, the floor is yours. Continue.
Okay, so I'll be speaking on the topic as seen there on the screen, that's using human capacity development to monetize the Japa syndrome, the energy sector, as a case study. And I want to contribute also to the various speakers who have come before me, and they have done a lot of justice even to what I have to say, but I've just had my little contribution. The Japa syndrome has become a very big problem and also a very big opportunity to the country, and it refers to the current trend of having our young Nigerians and not so young Nigerians emigrating, highly skilled Nigerians emigrating to seek greener pastures. And this has been a problem in the past in form of brain drain, but today we call it Japa syndrome. And again, it presents to us a big opportunity. How do we monetize this syndrome? How do we earn more revenue from this activity? From the last speaker, we have seen that, yes, Nigeria gets a lot of forex from our oil, but we can do so much more also from sharing our knowledge with the rest of the world, exporting our brain, and being part of the global value chain. So our focus today will be on how do we increase or improve on what we do. And I have my presentation outline, talk about the gaps in human capacity development. Then we look at the Japa syndrome, a double-edged sword, strategies to monetize the Japa syndrome. We look at the key stakeholders, what roles do we have? Then we look at some case studies, examples from across the globe, 1,000 Talents Plan of China, and the Global Initiative of Academic Networks. This is an Indian venture. And also we look at practical solutions and best practices for skills domestication, as well as implementation roadmap. So first, let's look at the gaps in human capacity development. So we have it today, and I've seen 5 key pillars that we can talk about here. One is a lack of strategic workforce planning. We typically have insufficient proactive assessment of future skills and talent needs, leading to reactive and ad hoc responses to human capacity development. The oil and gas industry, the energy sector, is a very competitive environment with changing dynamics every day. Technologies continually change, and such we need to have a strategic workforce planning to help us to kind of forecast into the future what kind of energy skills will be needed and how do we prepare for them. We also have a case of inadequate investment in continuous learning. This is quite common, especially here in Nigeria, where we have challenges with funding, especially training institutions. We have difficulty having enough funds, and therefore we have very limited available, and even for continuous education or continuous learning, this is always a challenge. And also we have limited collaboration between academia and industry. What we tried to do while we were in PTI was to foster relationship with bodies such as the OPTS and get some key industry players to come and to look at the curriculum and to see where there are gaps and what could be done to bridge such gaps. We also have weak linkages between human capacity development and organizational goals, and as well as insufficient emphasis on soft skills and behavioral competencies. The last speaker touched a lot on this, the importance of having soft skills. Good that we have the technical skills, but sometimes when you go outside of the country, what stands you out are not just the technical skills that you have, but how do you contribute to solving problems, your capacity to do critical thinking, communication, and other leadership abilities. All these are quite important that we need to get our students and graduates and young people that will be graduating and JAPA to inculcate in them. JAPA is such a big problem that it led to a one-time Minister of Finance in the country and presently Director General of World Trade Organization to, let me quote her, said the exodus of young talented Nigerians is a national crisis that demands urgent attention and innovative solutions. Yes, we can look at it both ways. It's a big challenge because when we look at the fact that after training somebody for so many years, then it takes his skills and go outside of the country, and Nigeria benefits not so much from his technical competence, but also it's an opportunity for us because we can again get a lot of remittances from this Nigerian in the diaspora. This is very critical to us today in the country, especially as we struggle to attract more forests from other sources. So the more we are able to export our talents, I believe that will bring in more revenue. So it's not all doom and gloom. There are some positive sides to that. So it's a double-edged sword. There's negative part, which has led to significant loss of talents, which poses challenges such as skill gaps, increased recruitment costs, and disruption of ongoing projects. But also there are potential opportunities. So there's a silver lining. The diaspora network can be created by this migration and can be leveraged for knowledge transfer, international collaborations, and even investment opportunities. So all these are possible if we, Nigeria as a whole, find a way to organize these people in the diaspora and take advantage of what they possess and also use in improving the local economy. What strategies are available? And I've here a number of strategies which are proposing, strategies that we can use to monetize or derive greater revenue from the JAPA syndrome. Number one of such is establishing a strong diaspora network. This will help us a lot when we engage our professionals all over the world, people that are very talented and have gained a lot of knowledge. Now we can get them involved and get them to interact in conferences, webinars. And today we have gotten somebody who's speaking to us from this diaspora. That's one of the advantages of technology and what we can do. So our people have gained experience all over the world in very competitive environments. So we can tap from such knowledge and begin to use it to our own advantage. Remote work and collaborations also is very important, especially in this day of technology. There are so many apps today that we can use to collaborate with people from different parts of the world. That's one of the advantages also. We have Nigerians all over the world and in different sectors. So we can use and tap from their knowledge by engaging them to collaborate with Nigerians at home, and especially in the academia, the number of people that are willing to contribute what they have learned and what they have gained abroad. So this is an advantage for us that we have them there. We can take them on and use them even to advance our own economy too. Then there are also possibility of training and development programs, offering advanced training programs and certifications. This has been talked about a lot also. One of the major problems we have is not being able to get good certifications for our people, and that also limits to the earning power and the ability to get them engaged internationally. So when we have such opportunities to train and to train to high levels and get certifications that are respected all over the world, then it positions us to have people that can work anywhere in the world and also earn forex for the country. Another is incentives for returning professionals. We can engage our professionals and encourage them to return. There are countries that do such. We'll look at that later. And what they do is to create an attractive environment, create incentives for returning professionals, such as tax breaks, housing allowances, opportunities for career advancement, such treatment to create kind of the environment they have where they are working today. That will enable them to come back and also encourage more investments. Also, we have investment in research and development. We can encourage R&D. If we have R&D people collaborating from wherever they are in the world, they can come in, do some research, and also contribute to startup projects. Critical stakeholders here, we have the training institutions, whether the university, the polytechnics, organizations, private individuals, or the training institutions collaborating with the industry and with government. These are very important to have. And when we have them, then each one has their role. The government established and enforced local content policies like we have the NCDMB doing and other regulators in the industry, and also provide incentives for skills development and invest in training infrastructure. This is very important. Having experience from the Petroleum Training Institute, we found that one of the major challenges is poor investment in infrastructure. That is very key. And if our institutions will be world-class to provide and to produce graduates that can stand their own anywhere in the world, then the country needs to do a lot more investing in infrastructure to make education and learning easier. Another critical role is for the industry to collaborate with training institutions, provide on-the-job training, and create apprenticeships programs to develop skilled local workforce. This is very important. The trainer in the industry, in the universities or polytechnics or other organizations can only do so much. The ability to translate what was learned even to practical use is a very key part of learning. However, we all know that we have a lot of challenges. We don't have sufficient opportunities for people to learn on the job. We don't have sufficient opportunities for people coming out from our training institutions to practice what they do. The curriculum always have there that we should do some industrial attachment and all that. But again, where are the industries? Sometimes industries are choked, they don't want to take more, and that becomes a big problem. So that students are learning, but they really cannot translate it to real life experience in the industry. Another challenge is for training institutions to develop industry relevant curriculum. Today, there's a disconnect between what the industry demands. So there's that mismatch. And sometimes what the universities produce, especially going by the very restrictive curriculum that we are operating, is very difficult. And that's why we have the industry players also now establishing their own training institutions. This ordinarily shouldn't be if the training institutions in the country are producing what the industry needed. So that's one area that we need to look at, and bodies like OGTAN can actually help to pressure the government and other stakeholders to see what we can do to improve in that area. There are examples around the world of countries that have maximized these opportunities, like the 1,000 Talents Plan. This is a China initiative. China benefits so much today from their diaspora engineers, the scientists, and what they do is give financial incentives to find a way to lure them back and to lure them to come back to the country to contribute, gain whatever they have gained from or abroad, come and domesticate it in the country. Also, we have professional opportunities. Returnees were offered higher ranking positions in universities and research institutions and industries. This is what China does, and Nigeria can also borrow a leaf from that and also find a way to create the kind of environment that will make our diaspora scientists and engineers to want to come back home and contribute to what we do here. India also has a similar initiative. That's the Global Initiative of Academic Networks. And the key features of this program include academic collaboration between the diaspora and the people in the country. Incentives and opportunities were created, as well as research and development support, as well as capacity building. So copying from India and also from China, we can see what they do and copy the best from them, and also domesticate that. Perhaps also we'll be able to attract even more gains from people that have left us, so that brain drain can actually be transformed to brain gain. Practical solutions that we could do, and earlier it was asked kind of what organizations like OGTAN and other bodies are doing. And one of the things we can do is to strengthen technical and vocational educational training. And this is very important. When we equip our people with the right skills, then we'll make them more capable to function anywhere in the world. And at this point, I think it is very important that we create the Sector Skills Council. This is very important. It is beyond what we currently do, just drawing up the NOS, that we need to have a permanent body to monitor everything and to constantly review and improve upon the curriculum. The Sector Skills Council is very important so that we can have for instance, the Petroleum Skills Council can be very useful here. Then we have also practical solutions include incentive for lifelong learning, forge partnerships with the industry, and also promote talent mobility, as well as leverage on emerging technologies. All these are practical solutions that we can do. Running through now to close, identify best practices for skill domestication will include identification and prioritization of skills, establishing a learning environment, and also personalized learning paths. Then also we can include leverage mentorship and coaching, encourage practice and application, as well as track and measure progress. I put here some kind of an implementation roadmap, short-term, what we can do immediately, which is to have a database of all Nigerian professionals in the energy sector abroad, and to launch a series of webinars featuring industry leaders. Medium-term goals will include what we do in the next 3 to 5 years, develop strategy strategic partnership with global energy companies and academic institutions to enhance our training programs, and long-term goals to create a robust ecosystem where the best brains become the brain drain can become brain gain. That is finding ways to bring our people back from wherever they are and contribute locally. Our takeaways, some of the major things we have stated, and I want to thank OGTAN for the opportunity to speak at this event. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Henry. Thank you for this incredibly exhaustive presentation. As an academician, I didn't expect any less. Thank you so much, sir. I'm going to go right into the questions so as to keep to time. And we have one question here, and it says, how does the sector address poor work hours in the sector and work scope for workers, along with compensation and health and safety of workers, which is being overlooked? So over to you, sir. Would you like me to take the question again?
No, I got it.
Okay,
yes.
Sir.
Earlier, I mentioned the importance of establishing a sector skills council. That sector skills council will involve the industry, the government, the workers themselves, and other relevant bodies. Because one of the major challenges we have is there's nobody actually looking out for the interests of the workers. So that council, when it's operational, and if we have such, we have representative of the workers, maybe they are union members or somebody elected to be on to serve there, so that the interest of the workers who actually does the work and who knows exactly how it is in the industry, who feels it, that can be taken care of. Until we do that, we also have this disconnect. Somebody sitting down in a big office and legislating on what workers should collect or earn. That is a challenge. So we need to have more workers involved in taking decisions and also helping to establish and set the organizational goals.
Thank you, sir. I think that's a fantastic answer. We really do need to ensure that all levels of the chain are represented in the decision-making process, because they are the ones who can truly, express what is going on in terms of worker benefits and how they're being treated. In the absence of any other question, because we have one more speaker and I'm aiming at 1:15, I will go ahead and welcome the president again to thank the speaker. But thank you so much, Dr. Henry. That was fantastic. Thank you, sir. Mr. President.
Thank you.
Hello.
Go ahead, sir.
Okay, it was hanging for a while, so I thought maybe I lost connection. Yeah,
Right.
thank you, Oluchi, and thank you. Dr. Adimula, you are base of office. We cannot forget how you have been very helpful in promoting the OGTAN course and forging the alliance that OGTAN has formalized. The synergy agreement that OGTAN has to work closely with PTI was signed under your administration. We are grateful to you for those moves to ensure that you don't just remain within the academia. You brought PTI to limelight in the oil and gas industry. So we are grateful for your leadership and thank you for your contributions. We have taken your advice. Basically, that's what you know already that OGTAN is working on, ensuring.
Like the UNDP.
Hello, someone is interrupting.
Go ahead, sir. I've muted him. Go right ahead, please.
Yeah, so we are, you already know that we have this triple helix arrangement to ensure that there is that synergy between the academia, the industry, and our regulators, and that's what bettered what we are doing at the sector's current oil and gas sector skills council, and which also bettered OGTAN as the national awarding body for oil and gas skills. So we are advancing all this to ensure that, in your word, we turn this brain drain to brain gain. And we assure you that you'll be part of that effort going forward, because you have a lot of things to bring to the table. And we'll continue to consult with you and involve you in all the ways that we need to help to refocus training to be specific to industry needs. So as well as encourage research and development. So someone asked a question on the how do we ensure that there's a beneficial pay structure for oil and gas skills. And I want to assure the person that it's part of what we have on the table, that we are trying to ensure that we have recommended wages for people that are properly skilled and certified. You know, so we are pushing this even through the local content board to ensure that there are levels or expected levels of remuneration that will go for people who are professionally skilled, because oil and gas skills are a global currency. And so if someone who is a welder abroad is earning $1,000 a month or $2,000 a month, someone in Nigeria who has the same certification should be able to earn that as well. So those are some of the things we are putting on the table. But a lot will also depend on the kind of person, the kind of attitude the person brings to his work. And that's why when we want to, before we finalize the program we are running, we want to ensure that the oil and gas trained welder is different from the street welder, that he has ethics, he has got HSC in mind, he has got quality and customer satisfaction protocols as part of his training. So those are the things that will ensure that when you are asking to be well paid, you are also offering very good services. So thank you, Dr. Adimula, once more. And like I said, we'll keep in touch.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you so much, Dr. Henry. We really appreciate you taking the time and for that fantastic presentation. We're super grateful, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Okay, great. And we have our final speaker. I'm going to read her profile and we're going to immediately start with her lecture. So thank you so much for joining us, Mrs. Alero. Mrs. Alero Onosode is a dynamic and seasoned business leader with over 30 years of distinguished experience in leadership, management consulting, human capital development, and business management, predominantly within the oil and gas industry, locally and internationally. She has significant experience working with boards, management teams, and business leaders to articulate people's and organizational ability, as well as integral parts of the strategic business thrust. She is currently the chairperson of the Diversity Sectorial Working Group of the Nigerian Content Consultative Forum of the NCDMB. She serves as the chief executive of AAQ-TSALACH Limited, a HR consulting organization focused on unleashing the prosperity of organizations and individuals. And the topic of her paper is the challenges of attracting and keeping qualified and competent people in the dynamic energy sector of Nigeria, still addressing the JAPA syndrome. Hello, ma'am. Thank you so much for joining us. We're super grateful to you.
Good afternoon.
Good
Can you hear me
afternoon,
clearly?
Very clearly. The floor is all yours, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. Mr. Chairman, sir, thank you so much for the privilege of sharing a few thoughts with you this afternoon. I must say that I'm actually not in town. I'm pitching in a room, so I hope I get the 15 minutes straight to be able to go through this presentation this afternoon. And I think, just listening to all the earlier speakers and the conversations around the value that JAPA can bring, just listening to the last speaker, how can we derive some positive benefits coming out of that conversation? I'll try to keep my discourse, quite short, but at the same time, just highlighting what continues to be the continued challenge of the syndrome we've known as JAPA in Nigeria today. And I think the beauty of this conversation is the same way we discuss JAPA. These days, we also discuss JAPADA. So as people are going, you're also seeing that there is the flux of people beginning to come back, having found out that probably things are not as easy as they thought it was going to be. And that really are some of the key things I would like to discuss in the conversation today. So I think as we go through this is just understanding the impact of JAPA on the oil and gas sector, and I'll put a bit of historical perspective to that discussion, and what has then become the challenge in being able to attract and retain talent. I'll just share briefly some of the strategies that could be deployed in addressing some of the concerns that we have had. This quote talking about the fact that for our sector, particularly in oil and gas, the ability to attract, develop, and retain competent people is the anchor of how we run our business. And if you do reflect and remember, for many years, the oil and gas sector has focused on building its own timber, as we call it. So it's basically recruiting people straight out of school or getting, entry points in terms of professional skills, developing them, and then retaining them. Of course, JAPA, this is not the first time we're dealing with the JAPA syndrome. I think particularly as I think about Andrew, if we all remember that advert of Andrew checking out and the encouragement that, we shouldn't all check out. It is no different from JAPA. The difference at the time, I would say though, was that the key driver around the exit or the exodus was really just about the economic benefits that people would get as they leave the country. But clearly, even though that was an issue for Nigeria, it was not necessarily an issue within the oil and gas sector for two reasons. One was in terms of the level of pay in those sectors, in terms of the development, but also because in those sectors, individuals had exposure to international assignments that kind of gave them the understanding in a safe environment of what it was to live. And most after those assignments, people will still come back under the understanding that home was best and home was profitable. But this time around, when we're discussing JAPA, the impact is beginning to show up also in the oil and gas sector. And I think that is what probably necessitates this kind of conversation, highlighting the complexity which the new JAPA actually brings to bear. Because in as much as we talk about the economic appeal and the need for greener pastures, there are a few other complexities around JAPA today that we need to pay attention to. First, of course, is that we say, look, it's really about the greener pasture, but I'll talk about a few things that I think have actually complicated the conversations beyond greener pastures, just beyond the money conversation. The next bit is like, now that people are exiting, the oil and gas sector that before now, in my experience, always had like a 4%, less than 4% attrition rate. In some cases, we're talking 1 to 2% attrition rate over many years. Now this same sector is dealing, still some would say, is significant to us, but you're still dealing with definitely less than 10% attrition in total. I think the key, what we see more with the oil and gas sector is what I will call half JAPA. You see individuals who are here in body, but their souls are elsewhere because their family, their roots are being planted in other regions. And that, I think, is actually the complexity that we're dealing with in the oil and gas sector as we go forward. The other bit is, of course, when we talked checking out or JAPA in the past, it was very much around young people. And one of the ways in which the oil and gas sector has kind of leveraged its capability is on the older employees as well. So ex-retirees have been a major boost of resource for new companies, particularly in the digital space. As they come up, they rely very heavily on these experienced retired hands. I think the interesting bit now is when we're looking even at the rate of JAPA in that sector. There are people who are waiting just to retire, and they also are immigrating either to Canada or to the UK. So the resource base that I would call the secondary pillar for the sector is also not available, because I guess after many years of work, they also think that to retire now means I need to be retiring to some level of comfort somewhere else in the world. And I think that really is what begins to create a bit of complexity in this discussion. The young ones are going, we can expect them to go, but even the older ones that we were counting on to be part of the support system are also not staying behind. So really managing that is almost like the first line of defense has failed, and also the second line of defense is significantly weakened with the conversations around Japa. So I think in terms of the factors contributing to it, like I said, the economic issues one cannot overlook, particularly looking at the performance of the Naira against other currencies, the high levels of inflation, the average person, and I think as the chairman spoke earlier, the average skilled person holds the key that many parts of the world are looking for. They would explore those opportunities and try to maximize to their best abilities, the skills that they have. But I think the other bit that actually makes this a bit more complicated is the security and the social context in which people are having to live in Nigeria. A lot of the individuals, particularly amongst the young ones, when you ask them, they're immigrating, what is the key driver? For a lot of people, they tell you it's their children, it's the education, is the ability to give their families a certain standard and quality of life. And I think that is what really complicates that discourse, because it is not necessarily a rational conversation. You see people walk away from jobs that are very well paying. They seem to have a good quality of life, but they sell everything, and they sell everything almost basically saying, this is a no return policy that they are trying to exercise on the basis of what they've told themselves about the future of their children and the need for those children to be in another clime for them to be able to come to their potential or to be able to become people of significance in their life journey. And I think once you get to that point, the conversation around Japa is not necessarily logical. It becomes a very emotional discourse. And you then begin to see, behaviors that to some extent you wonder what is foiling that. So I think that for me is really what makes the Japa probably a bit more complicated compared to some of the other discussions we've had in the past. For some people, it's really the fact that in a bid for them to be able to compete internationally, the bit around getting additional education, getting additional proficiencies is important so that they find it as a route to market themselves. And what we have then seen is that the education route has become one of the most popular ways in which people are exploring the migration to other places. What impact has that had? Like I said, it's the first and second barriers. Lines of defense have been weakened. What it then means in many cases is that organizations are scrambling for resources. A lot of job openings is difficult to be able to attract local people available locally for those jobs. There's definitely increased costs around the recruitment, weakened talent pipeline, succession, conversations have become very weak, and that begins to continue to inhibit the overall productivity and efficiency within the sector. So that is really the experience you're beginning to see in many organizations in terms of the ability to just attract the right talent as we go forward. But some of the discourse, and I think I really want to focus the conversations around understanding the uniqueness. I mentioned that this has become quite an emotional discourse when we look at Japa and why people are moving. And some of the times organizations feel helpless because these are situations that they would say are clearly outside of their control. So issues of security, the economic conditions, organizations do not necessarily feel that they are in a position to begin to manage some of these complexities. But the key thing I believe is the level of leadership and the capacity of leadership to be able to address the emotional connection that is required to make people choose to stay. And I'll just talk quickly about a few of those, keeping an eye on the time because some of these conversations can get very interesting and it becomes a bit intense in terms of how one goes through it. But let me just quickly put emphasis on a few points that I think become important in terms of that discussion around how do you attract and retain. The first one, of course, and I think the other speakers have spoken to that significantly around the flexible work arrangement. The traditional ways in which we have contracted for work may not suffice in this environment. So clearly, like I said, what I've seen in practice is a number of companies is that people have their families emigrating and they are staying behind for as long as you can put in place some arrangement that allows them to go home frequently enough. So organizations are going to need to revisit what we used to call the customized work cycle that allows for people to go home for significant periods of time and then also come to work. The other bit that is going to change is how we contract. Now you don't contract people, you contract them for the work you need them to do. So looking at project-based contracting work arrangements as we go forward is clearly one way to go. The other things organizations probably need to begin to look at is how do you increase your intake because your attrition is going to be higher. It increases your cost, but at least it also ensures that you're putting more people through the development journey. And as you lose some, hopefully you're still able to keep the critical mass around the people that, that you need for your business to maintain your base load activity. Before I forget, the customized work cycle arrangement actually also works very well with people in their second careers. So even though they've emigrated, they're happy to come and do some work for some period and then still go back home for their well-deserved rest. So just to make sure, ensure that that conversation attracts both the younger ones, but also the older skills that we might have. I wouldn't flog the issue of the competitive salaries. I think the chairman just talked again about that in terms of being sure that what we're paying individuals is comparable to what they could be earning in other places. But most importantly, that it allows for a living wage. It allows people to be able to maintain decent levels and standards of living in their current environment. And the third piece I think is really important is the issues of mentorship and the leadership capabilities of those managing individuals. And I raise the mentorship conversation particularly because a lot of the individuals that are Japan are in many cases in need of advice at the times these decisions are being made. They need those relationships that are able to steer them in the right direction. Because like I said, many have gone and they're finding out that things are not necessarily as they have anticipated. Unfortunately, they're already in those climes and they've uprooted everything uprootable on this side of the veil. So it's really important that leadership begins to build a different type of relationship with their employees that allows them to intervene when some of these critical decisions are being made. The point around advocacy on government policies, businesses can no longer step aside and neither can ourselves as capacity developers step aside on issues of advocacy and ensuring that the country as a whole functions in a manner that is able to attract and retain. And just going along those lines is why I talk again about the issues of promoting an inclusive setting, building the necessary trust, and also ensuring that we continue to engage with people, whether they're home or abroad. You never know when that opportunity or when one person will be ready to jackpada, and you want to be sure that when they do that, that they have the home right with you. So I think the key thing we need to be focusing on, as I think the chairman already mentioned, is as much as we focus on those key technical capabilities, they are important in terms of people's ability to compete and in terms of their ability to enrich the overall ecosystem. I think the issue of the leadership that we provide is extremely important. The leadership that is inclusive, the leadership that cares enough to step into the situations people are confronting and is able to build that community necessary as we go forward. Care is a critical trade in the world that we're in to ensure that before people even japa, they know that somebody cares and they're getting the right kind of support, but most importantly, that the door is open, relationships are maintained for the times when they will jackpada. So I think just knowing that this continues to be a challenge, but again, the positive side is there are interventions that we definitely can put in place to engage with people and to also ensure that our organizations are running by looking at creative solutions around how we contract and enroll with people even as they work abroad. And I think those, for me, are key considerations. It is a reality. It can be managed by how we structure work, but most importantly, by how we build the capacity of leaders to care. Thank you very much. I think that would be my short contribution to this discussion. Thank you once more for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Mike. But honestly, at this point, I feel like every participant needs to pay for this amount of knowledge that has been shared today. I can't believe it's free. I paid for programs where I didn't get this much value. Thank you so much, ma'am. You hit the nail on the head on so many different things. The chat box is going crazy. A lot of people are agreeing with you and giving their perspective. I don't have any questions yet, but it was such a wholesome presentation in terms of the content of it, what you said, talking about engagement. I especially liked what you said about the JAPA is not usually a logical decision, it's emotional. I truly, truly, truly believe that, and that resonated very deeply with me. Thank you so much for your presentation. I'd like to ask if there are any questions. I can maybe let one person ask a question if they would use the raise hand button. You have 30 seconds to ask the question if you have one. So I'm just going to give that opportunity because I know that people are super, super excited about everything you've had to say. All the speakers today, honestly, have been absolutely amazing. Thank you so much, ma'am. And for those asking, yes, you will get a copy of the presentations after now. So look out for that in your emails. So I can't see any questions. So I think that would take me to the president to thank Mrs. Alero for doing an amazing job with her topic. So, Mr. President, are you there?
Yes, yes, I am.
Please, she deserves a presidential thank you, honestly.
Yeah, vintage Alero as usual. So thank you, one of our strong supporters. She's been a pillar of support to OGTAN, and anytime we call on her, she's always available. I guess from what she said, she's not even in the country, but she still made our time. So we are deeply grateful. Associations like ours don't grow without pillars of support like you. The recognition we get in the industry is by association with people like you. OGTAN is not basically a statutory organization as such, but with the kind of the relevance we have in the industry, and people like you that share good things, that work with good ideas, they align properly, and that has helped boost our relevance. So I want to thank you for the complex, showing us the complexity of this JAPA syndrome the way it is, and also giving us very good ideas about how we need to retain talents, flexible work environment, career advancements, leadership, ethical and empathetic leadership, and all that. This is all very, very key to the discussion on hand. How OGTAN is looking at it and saying, the best, he who is, for you to demand gold, you need to actually be diamond in, you have a diamond reputation. The way we're looking at it is that if you are a possessor of a globally relevant professional competence-based training and certification, you are competitive. You are in a position to demand respect, because the beauty of the oil and gas industry schemes is that they are benchmarked against international practices. So that's what OGTAN is driving, that it doesn't matter whether, if you're not needed here, then you'll be needed outside, because wherever there is something to be done requiring your knowledge, you are available and you are acceptable. So I think this is what I share the value propositions you bring, but I just want to add that it is important that our people realize that they need to have these globally relevant certifications and also have a very good work attitude. That's why we are emphasizing the OGTAN training being a holistic one, having to create a holistically a capable person who is not just professionally certified, but also ethically and morally sound, and understands customer satisfactions and has a quality and safety at the back of his as he renders his services. So thank you again. Like I said, you are all resource persons to us, and we'll keep engaging you in all these things. God bless you, madam.
Once again, massive thank you to Mrs. Alero Onosode for an amazing, amazing presentation. I can see that Professor Mike's hand is up. Prof, you have the floor, please. Welcome, sir.
Actually, after this president's speech, I'm not supposed to talk.
We'll make an exception for you, sir. Please go ahead.
Let me say that if we stop by just sending this material to us, that means we may not have reached the authorities that have to listen to this. This is one of the best presentations I've ever had about this issue. That of Mrs. Alero, Henry, Chiwueze, and the lady from Heirs. My suggestion is that we get the presentation and put them together like a communique, and make sure that even the National Assembly will have copies of this communique, because the people underestimate the problem and they also underestimate the consequences, and many people don't have any idea about the solution. But today I've seen different, approaches to this issue. And that's why I'm pleading with Sam. We don't have to stop here now, but we have to go forward and let the Secretariat put a paper together. And we can even go to the newspaper and highlight a few things. I think we owe the society that, and that will be very helpful, because this is a problem that can completely erode our business existence and other things when we keep on losing valuable people to other countries. And that is my submission. Sama, thank you so much. You've done very, very well. Very, very well. And we look forward to more of this, particularly as it affects contemporary issues in our society. Keep on coming to here. I will say, may God bless all of you that spoke and all of you that listened. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Prof. The father of OGTAN. Thank you, sir.
Many thanks. I appreciate your contribution, and you are completely correct. Something else has to be done other than sending the slides. So the committee will put together something, I'm very sure. We have come to the end of this important conversation. This is the first webinar or situation I've hosted where nobody seems to want it to end. But fortunately, it has to, because we have some very, very busy people on the call. But I have to say that personally, I have been very, very enlightened, and it's just been interesting to have this conversation around relocation and JAPA in a more practical way, from different angles, from different people who have worked in human resources, people who are in oil and gas industry, from the academics as well, everything. It's just been such a holistic program, and I think that everyone here has definitely gotten value. Yes, the link to the recording will be appreciated, no problem, it will be sent. I heard somebody ask around whether it will be put on YouTube. I will work with the Secretariat to see if we can have that happen, so that an easy link can be sent and other people can benefit from today's conversation. So there's a point for a summary, but I think that we've been engaged enough for us to skip that, because again, we're trying to end this in the next few minutes. We are supposed to have closing remarks, and I'd like to invite, sorry, this will be putting him on the spot, but our original candidate for this vote of thanks is unavailable. So Mr. Chris Osanwese, who is the Abuja coordinator and a member of the National Executive Council. I'm so sorry, sir, that I'm doing this to you, but I really need you to please help us with the vote of thanks, as Mr. Dapo is currently unavailable. I don't know if you're here, sir.
Yes, I am. Thank you very much.
Please go right ahead, sir. Sorry.
Thanks. Yeah, it's been a great day. It's been really, really nice listening to all the four speakers. So they really done justice to the topics allocated to them. I especially like to thank our president for this initiative, and the vice president also for driving and making this to happen. Without your steers and your high level commitment to this particular project, I'm sure it will be less than successful. So we thank both of you earnestly. Others would like to say a very special thank you to the 4 speakers who we called up, relatively short notice. And we all agreed that all 4 of them have done justice to the topics allocated to them. We particularly say a very big thank you. And to our OGTAN members, some of us joined very early, but by 10 past, we had almost 100 persons on the call. So we especially thank all of those that turned up early and those that turned up to listen to these presentations. We also like to thank our Board of Trustee members who have also shown up and been part of this and us actively also asked questions. We thank you for your continuous care and guidance to OGTAN. We look forward to the next set of lectures. It's supposed to be quarterly. So we pray that when we also invite you to join us again in another set of OGTAN lecture series, you will also turn up. And then finally, we'd like to thank our moderator, Mrs. Oluchi Okafor. You've done an excellent job. The way you facilitated the program has made it very easy to follow and understand. So we thank you very much. And you know what they say, the reward for good work is more work. So Oluchi, your job is cut out. So thank you very much and wish everyone a very lovely week. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chris. Thank you for the subtle threats at the back of my appreciation. I appreciate it as well. So on that note, it's 1:29. So yes, we're going to close now. A huge thank you to everyone who put this together. A huge thank you to every one of our speakers, and a big thank you to everyone who joined today. We wouldn't have a program if you didn't join, and you joined, you stayed till
and the OGTAN Secretariat, yeah.
And in fact, the biggest shout out to the OGTAN Secretariat for putting this together, for allowing us to have minimal tech issues. Just everything just went really well today, and I'm super happy and super proud to have moderated this event. Once again, my name is Oluchi Okafor. I'm the ULC in University Liaison Coordinator for OGTAN, and I also manage Multimix Academy. Thank you so much for joining us. I wish you all a very wonderful rest of your day. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Thank you for attending.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
What can I do for you now?